It's Meet the Writers for the Barnes & Noble studio on BN.com. I'm Steve Bertrand. When you think of the war on terror, do you think of a global war fought by men, or maybe a heavenly war, a cosmic war fought on behalf of God? Reza Aslan has written the book, How to Win a Cosmic War, and he argues for the latter. Reza, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me about that. What is a cosmic war?
A cosmic war is a religious war. It's a war in which participants believe they're acting out on Earth a battle that's actually taking place in heaven between the cosmic forces of good and evil, and that we human beings are nothing more than just sort of actors in a divine script written by God.
So that it's inevitable?
It's not just inevitable. It's a war that's sort of already been fought and won, in primordial time, that, the good always in the end triumphs over evil. So what we do on Earth is kind of irrelevant, but that also means that all ethical concerns are also irrelevant. After all, if it's, God that's shooting my gun, not me, then what does it matter, what human morality has to do with it?
When you hear that description first, I think many of us in the United States would say, well, that's exactly what bin Laden is doing.
It is exactly what he's doing.
But you make it clear that in many ways that's what the U.S. is doing too.
Unfortunately,
Explain
yes.
that for me.
I mean, the argument of the book is that Al-Qaeda and these various militant groups who associate with this global jihadist movement are fighting a cosmic war, that they're engaged in a war of the imagination. Their goals, their agendas can't be achieved in any real or measurable terms. They truly do believe they're engaged in this cosmic battle between the forces of good and evil for the future of civilization. Well, unfortunately, the previous administration, by essentially adopting the exact same religiously polarizing language and the same cosmic worldview, also conceived of the war on terror precisely as a war between good and evil for the future of civilization, and in doing so, not just validated the viewpoint of the jihadists, but ensured that this becomes the kind of conflict that can never be won.
The jihadists, we would argue, did it consciously. Did the Bush administration, the U.S., do it less consciously?
No, the Bush administration did it consciously. This is something that I think a lot of people have a problem with, because they just think that the president was maybe ignorant or just plain stupid. But he's not. He is a true believer. He truly believed in the words, the very deep sort of evangelizing spirit that he infused into his foreign policy. But more importantly than that, the truth is that most Americans believe it as well. I mean, this is a very religious country. Almost 50% of the country defines itself as evangelical. There is a real sense from the very first days in which this country was founded that we are the new Israel, that we have been placed on earth to sort of set forth, the new covenant with God. And most Americans, who were already brimming with religious fury after September 11th anyway, just needed a leader to sort of give them a lens to kind of focus this apocalyptic vision of this conflict, and Bush provided that lens.
I'm not sure if this applies, but you write about the difference of you were born in Iran, you were born an Iranian typically, or you were born a Frenchman, but you become an American.
Yes.
It's sort of a transformational position. Explain that for me.
Yeah, one of the major themes of this book is this issue of identity, because frankly, the way that jihadism spreads, and particularly in Europe, that's where the real epicenter of this transnational global movement is that it seeks out, those who do not have an identity, who are searching for an alternative form of identity, and who, whether they're in the UK or France or Germany or whatever, don't have access to a firm national identity that they can call their own. And that's part of the reason why jihadism just doesn't work in the United States, is because we have such a strong, firm sense of national identity. And what I was saying was, when I was in Iran, even as a child, I mean, you could dress American, you could talk American, you could act American, and everybody knew what that meant. That American was something that you could become, whereas Iranian was something that you just were. And I still think to this day that it's that sense of the, let's call it the American dream, that is the best antidote to these movements of extremism in the Muslim world.
With that explanation, tell me the story of Hasib Hussein.
Hasib Hussein was the youngest of the 7/7 bombers, the London bombers who in 2005 blew up themselves and a number of their citizens on the London Underground and bus system. And when I use the story of Hasib Hussein to explain how does a young man become a jihadist? What is the process that this goes through? Especially if you think about jihadism as a social movement. And this was a young kid, 18 years old, who felt neither British nor Pakistani, who couldn't get any kind of the kind of spiritual engagement in his mosque that satisfied his politically active and social conscious need for spirituality, and who found that identity online, which is where jihadism really exists. You know, it's sort of in the virtual world. And through a very intense relationship with the ringleader of that group, Muhammad Sadiq Khan, ultimately absorbed this romantic ideal. And it's romanticism that fuels these kids, that he could transform the world, that he could become sort of the hero of the oppressed with just a few pounds of explosives and a will fortified by the divine.
Is there a similarity to that, to the becoming of that, to the becoming of an American?
Absolutely. It's this need for an identity that satisfies, you know, our needs in this global world, this sort of world without borders that we're now living in. And unlike in large parts of the world, the American national identity, we may have different ideas about what that means, but it's this ever malleable thing that can sort of absorb itself into every culture and ethnicity and identity. And the same is true of jihadism. It's like a glove that you put on that allows you to sort of make sense of your sense of self in an indeterminate world.
After September 11th, many of us here in the States said, well, if we would address their grievances, if we would address the Palestinian situation, the globalization, the commercialization, that we would take away their reason for this cosmic war. But you say that's not true.
Well, it's true in one sense and not true in another. You see, the jihadists, the leaders of this movement, you know, the bin Ladens and the Zawahiris and all of these sort of ideologues, the militants with the guns, their grievances are just symbolic grievances. They're not issues to be addressed or policies to be enacted. They're just sort of abstract symbols to rally around. None of the 19 hijackers, you know, who brought down those twin towers believed that doing so would bring peace to Palestine or would result from, you know, result in the removal of American troops from the Middle East. They didn't care about those things. But the truth is that for the hundreds of millions of young Muslims around the world who watch those towers fall, these are legitimate grievances. And the reason that we have to address these grievances is not because it'll make bin Laden go home. Nothing will make him go home. He's fighting a cosmic war. He has no earthly agenda. The reason we need to address these grievances is that it will take away the reason for jihadism's existence. In other words, it'll take away its bite, its purpose, its appeal, because we will co-opt those issues that fuel this cosmic impulse.
How do you win a cosmic war?
Well, you win a cosmic war by not fighting one.
And is that what Barack Obama is doing or not doing?
He is, in fact. I mean, it's just the beginning. He's got a long way to go. But in the simple act of changing the very rhetoric of this war, by stop using the word war on terror, which has been so deeply infused with this cosmic sense of warfare, that really makes a difference. We have to strip these conflicts of their religious connotations and focus on the material matters that are at stake. Otherwise, they'll never end, because cosmic wars are eternal wars.
As we close, you have also written or are working on a biography of Jesus.
That's right.
How, a rabble-rouser.
A real rabble-rouser.
How would he fit in? Could you apply jihadism to him?
No, because Jesus didn't have a global agenda. And this is sort of one of the issues that I'm excited to kind of explore some more. Jesus was a religious nationalist. He was a political revolutionary. He wanted to bring down the social order and replace it with a new order. And my argument is that the New Testament writers who wrote their stories about Jesus 40, 50 years after he died, the first Gospel of Mark was written, after the destruction of Jerusalem, after the war against Rome had resulted in the expulsion of all Jews from Israel, and after a sense of real sort of pacifism had settled upon Judaism, the story of Jesus was written. And that was the first time the story of Jesus was written. And in a sense, they sort of defanged Jesus. They took away, you know, the sort of revolutionary spirit within his message. And I'm going to put that message back.
Well, we look forward to it. Reza Aslan, nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
It's Meet the Writers for the Barnes & Noble Studio on BN.com. I'm Steve Bertrand.